led by the vocal music director, Lynn Herbal, and the Moore High School Chamber Choir. Please stand as we sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early lights what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose rough stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wonderful job, Chamber Choir. Thank you for being here and singing so beautifully. And again, thank you all for joining us today as we reflect upon the events of May 20th, 2013. I'm Richie Splitt. I'm the president and CEO of Norman Regional Health System. And I was in the health system and on this site on May 20th, 2013. And I want to welcome all of you to Norman Regional Moore, formerly known as Moore Medical Center. It's difficult to believe these 10 years have passed since that EF5 tornado tore through our community and claimed the lives of 24 of our friends, our neighbors, and our loved ones. That event forever changed our lives and changed our community. And today we remember those we lost in the tornado, and we will honor those who helped heal our community on that fateful day and every day since. Before we begin, I have to run through some programmatic things, so I'd like to do that now. And first, I want to start with the recognition of our event sponsors. So as I mentioned your company, if you would just raise your hand, I'll run through the list. There are 5 of them, and then we'll give them a round of applause. And I'll start with Tinker Federal Credit Union for the Moore Strong Pens, First United Bank for the water bottles. What a wonderful new facility you've opened to the south of us here. And Community Coffee for the coffee and tea. Chick-fil-A of Moore and Norman. Mercury Press for the wonderful posters. So if you all would join me in saying thank you to them for their sponsorship. We truly appreciate your generosity and your ongoing support of our community and Norman Regional Health System. I'd also like to recognize our event collaborators, the City of Moore, and Brooks Mitchell is here, and Councilmember Ham is here, and we have other council members as well. And I want to thank you all, City of Moore, for being here today. And Moore Public Schools, Dr. Romines and his staff, and some of his graduates in the room as well. So thank you for being here. Thank you for standing with us today, and thank you for your outstanding community leadership and your invaluable partnership, not only to the hospital, but to our entire community. You mean so much to us, and thank you for being here. You will hear from them a little bit later today. Today, you will also hear from an amazing woman and nurse, Shayla Taylor, sitting here to my left and your right. 10 years ago tomorrow, Shayla, she was the only patient inside Moore Medical Center who could not be relocated to a lower level sheltered space. That led to 4 of our nurses. At least one of them is here today. Allison Hickey. Where are you, Allison? Over here. Anybody else here as well that was with you, that led Allison and three other of our nurses to stay with and pray with Shayla and her unborn child as the tornado wrecked our hospital and ultimately ripped the entire wall from the room in which they were sheltering. Remarkably, Shayla and our nurses, they were unharmed. And later, Shayla was transported to the Norman Regional Healthplex, where she delivered a healthy baby boy, Braden Emmanuel. Shayla has an incredible story to share, and I'm grateful that she's here today to share that with all of us. And by the way, 10 years later, Shayla, she is now a nurse in the labor and delivery unit, the very place where she gave birth to Braden. Following Shayla, Nick Napoli, our chaplain, he will read the names of those we lost in the tornado. And we will honor them with a moment of silence. And then the Moore High School Chamber Choir will perform for us once again. And it would be rough on me. It would be rough on me if I didn't pause and recognize and say thank you to our volunteer therapy dogs and their handlers. Nina, if you'll wave. Lynn, if you'll wave. And their furry friends, Paisley and Benny, both are here today. Nina, by the way, actually was a part of the dog intake on the day of the tornado on May 20th. But they're here, and we will have some canine comfort for you as we go along today. So thank you both for being here. Finally, we will have a proclamation that will be read by Councilmember Mark Ham. And that proclamation is from the governor of the state of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt. And I'm excited to share with you that tomorrow has been declared More Remembrance Day in the state of Oklahoma. And Mark will read that for us a little bit later. Ladies and gentlemen, 10 years have passed since a devastating tornado tore through our community, leaving behind a broad path of destruction and heartache. And today, we gather not to dwell on the pain of the past, but to commemorate the strength, resilience, and sheer determination that emerged from the rubble on that day. For it was in the face of tragedy that we discovered the power of unity. Neighbors became pillars of support, extending helping hands and offering shoulders to lean on. Strangers turned into friends, bound by a common purpose to rebuild, to heal, and to forge ahead. We stand here today on hallowed ground where the winds of adversity tested the very foundation of our community. In the face of the storm, we witnessed extraordinary bravery and selflessness of our first responders, many of whom are here today. Thank you for your service to our community, our fellow citizens, and our Moore Medical Center healers. We call all of our employees healers, and so our Moore Medical Center healers also taking swift action on that day. Those healers who were working at Moore Medical Center, they were the actual embodiment to me of courage and clear thinking in the midst of utter chaos. Heroes emerged on that day, not wearing a cape or armor, but with compassion and dogged determination to help those in need. When the tornado unleashed its wrath directly onto our hospital, our healers stood tall, even as they hunkered down. They faced the unimaginable with skillful hands and caring hearts. They protected those who were inside and then quickly dispatched to tend to those who were injured outside. As I mentioned, they offered their bodies and their prayers to protect a woman and her unborn child on the second floor. And the healers of Moore Medical Center comforted those who were in pain and offered hope to those who were in despair. They worked tirelessly, surpassing their own limits, ensuring all who needed help would receive it. On that very day and in the days that followed, the process of rebuilding began, not in terms of bricks and mortar, but in the hearts and souls of our people and our community. And speaking of rebuilding, we're standing in the newly rebuilt Moore Medical Center, now called Norman Regional Moore. In my mind, and I hope you agree, this building not only serves as a place of healing, but it serves to honor the victims, our first responders, the healers, and the heroes who assisted during the aftermath of the tornado. I remember in the days that followed the tornado, our nurses went into the community and gave tetanus vaccines to those who were clearing debris. They volunteered in various and multiple disaster response locations. They cleared debris for others, even as their own homes lay in ruin. So many selfless acts on that day and the days that followed. About 6 months after the tornado, Norman Regional opened a temporary but full service emergency department nearby, just to the south a bit, and that opening was followed quickly by the opening of a physical therapy clinic. It wasn't easy, but it was important. It was important to us because it was important to you, because it was important to our community, and this community is our home. For us, the temporary facilities ensured that the residents of Moore received continuous health care delivered in a timely manner. Additionally, those temporary buildings, we thought of it as a public statement of and symbol of resilience, recovery, and renewal. You just can't keep a good town down. We proudly served our community from those locations until this beautiful facility opened in June of 2016. Did you know? From our opening in 2016 until the end of the month, last month, that Norman Regional Moore, the healers who work here, have cared for roughly 150,000 patients through our emergency room. To break that down, on average, that's about 58 patients a day. That is the equivalent to every single Moore resident, all 63,000 of us, coming through the ER more than 2 times each. And I'm not even talking about lab and imaging and physician clinic visits. That's a significant number of people seeking help, seeking care right here on this site. So I want to thank you all for placing your trust in Norman Regional Health System and allowing us to care for you and your families. Today, Norman Regional Moore not only promotes health and wellness for our community, it provides essential services that offer peace of mind, especially during your time of greatest need. Moore is in our DNA, and we are proud to be your healthcare partner. And just a quick note about the sculpture that's out front of the main entrance here, because I believe it's important that you understand its purpose, and you may not know that. Some of you do, and it may be worth reminding you and exploring that a little bit today. That public art out front is dedicated to you, to our community. It started as a project that we called Art for Healing, and it evolved into an international call to artists. From that call to artists, we had 4 countries, artists from 4 different countries, and nearly every state in the United States of America submit a potential plan. We wanted them to submit ideas that would reinforce our connection with others, to provide hope and healing to the community, and all of that while we were creating a sense of belonging and understanding right here in our community through that art. And through our Norman Regional Foundation, we assembled a committee that included our Norman Regional healers and volunteers and community members, and they set about the business of narrowing down all of those artists so that we could choose the best of the best. And in the end, we selected a well-known artist out of Rhode Island. His name is Brower Hatcher, and Brower submitted the name of his art project as The Sanctuary. In The Sanctuary, if you haven't been out there, I encourage you to do that today. Step into it and experience it. But in that sanctuary, there are steel rods. There are 4 of them, and there are 4 colors: pink, purple, blue, and gold. Those same 4 colors can be found in our incredible Oklahoma sunrises and sunsets, and that's what it represents. Each of those steel rods also represents the strength found in each of us individually. All of you and me individually are strong. Every steel rod, as strong as they are on their own, is further strengthened when they are connected and joined to the 2,400 connecting crystals. Interestingly, the U.S. Department of Commerce estimated 2,400 buildings were destroyed by the tornado on May 20th. And through the refraction or the bending of light, these crystals produce tiny, beautiful rainbows. And those rainbows, they represent and symbolize hope and renewal and the calm after the storm. They remind us that brighter days will follow even the darkest storms. The sanctuary is our public display of hope and healing, and maybe most importantly, it represents how this community is truly stronger when we are together. So I hope you enjoy your public art, the sanctuary, and take a moment to step through that this afternoon. We all know that healing takes time, and the scars of that fateful day may linger in many of us, but let us not forget the unconquerable spirit that emerged from the chaos of that day. Just look at what we have achieved in the past 10 years. Just look around, drive through our community, you can see it. We've rebuilt our homes, our churches, our schools, this hospital, and our lives, brick by brick, heart by heart. This community has successfully turned tragedy into opportunity for growth, healing, and renewal. And for that, we should all be immensely grateful and proud of our achievements. Today, we gather stronger than ever before, not defined by that tornado, but by the unwavering courage, determination, and unification that followed. We have faced adversity head on, and together we have overcome. As we reflect on the past 10 years, let us remember the lives that were lost, honor their memory by embracing the love and resilience that has united us, not only then, but still today. Let us draw strength from the lessons learned, and let us continue to support and uplift one another. And may the memory of the fallen and the resilience of our community be beacons of hope for generations to come. Together, we shall rise above any adversity, for we are more, and we are unapologetically in pursuit of a better tomorrow. I want to thank you all for being here today. May God bless the healers of Norman Regional Health System and the great people of this community. Thank you very much. So at this time, I'd like to invite to the podium Councilmember Mark Ham, and he will read that proclamation and share a few thoughts. Your hand's full, sorry.
Let me read this proclamation from our Governor Stitt. It says, whereas in remembering the 10 years since the Moore tornadoes that killed 25 Oklahomans, and whereas we today in solidarity with the city of Moore, Moore Police and Fire, Moore Public Schools, Norman Regional Health System, MSTAT, and responders from across the state to honor our community and recognize the perseverance, resilience, and strength that it has taken Moore to heal, mourn, and come together and rebuild. And whereas May 20th marks 10 years since the F5 tornado ravaged Moore, taking the lives of 25 Oklahomans, and whereas Norman Regional's Moore Hospital was destroyed that day in this very spot where we stand today, the amount of first responders, medical professionals, friends, neighbors, and strangers that pulled together since the May afternoon to help each other is a true spirit of Oklahoma that allowed us to lay a new foundation to rebuild upon. Whereas we will never forget the lives lost, and most importantly, we will never forget the overcoming spirit and strength with the people of Oklahoma. Now, therefore, our governor, Kevin J. Stitt, does hereby proclaim May 20th, 23 as Moore Remembrance Day in the state of Oklahoma. And I have just a few words that I would like to share. It says, on behalf of our mayor, Glenn Lewis, and my fellow city councilors, Danielle McKenzie, Jason Blair, Melissa Hunt, Louis Williams, Adam Webb, and our Moore city manager, Brooks Mitchell, we want to say thank you to Norman Regional for putting this together and giving us an opportunity to say a few words. In an hour or so, we're all going to go back to our vehicles and we're going to go about the rest of our day. And as you get in your car, you're going to notice that you have a big windshield in front of you, and that's good. It's important to know where you're going. But in each of our cars, we also have a small rear view mirror. And that also is important because it's good to know where it is that we have been. So it's a small thing, but it serves something very important. Where we're going is important, but where we've come from is just as important, and we should never forget that. We all have stories to tell. Everyone in this room has a story to tell. Sometimes we get to write our own stories, and other times they're written for us. Nonetheless, it's our story. And in my own life, I've had all kinds of plans, but my story has ever been written the way that I would have written it. In Proverbs 19:21, it says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails." 10 years ago, in this very spot, we witnessed devastation. How could anything good come from this? Many lost their homes, their property, photographs of memories, and some lost things even more valuable than that, people they love. If you were to take a drive to the neighborhood just across the street, you would see new homes. You would see people going about their lives, writing their own story. It would almost seem like nothing had ever really happened. But if you look, if you slow down and if you'll look, you'll really begin to see the scars that are still there. There are some homes that haven't been rebuilt yet. There are gouge marks in trees that tell a story. And in the same way that there are visible scars, we carry scars, whether it be as a child when you were riding your bicycle and you had a crash, or when I was a little boy, my father was throwing me up on the bed and I missed the bed and hit the side rail and split my head open. There's a scar there. But we also have scars of our heart. And sometimes those scars can be even more dangerous than the ones we see, because on the outside, everything looks fine and like there's not a problem. But those scars are there and they have a story to tell. We all have a story to tell. Every day when I drive to work, I go down Northwest 27th Street and I go underneath the underpass over by Burlington Northern Santa Fe. And if you look at the pillars that uphold that bridge, you will see scars on those pillars. Those pillars have been painted black, but in 1999, there was another tornado that went through there, and it's left those scars all of these years. Many people drive through there and don't even give it a second thought. But for me, it's just a constant reminder of the pain, a reminder of endurance, of perseverance, a reminder that life goes on, that there will be scars, and that's okay. That's a part of our story. It's a part of your story as well. Something good that does happen when horrible things happen is how we as a community, as a people, come together. I remember in 2013, after this had happened, people from all over the country wanted to help in some way. And what is so beautiful about that, nobody said, well, nobody asked for their political party affiliation. Nobody asked for what was a person's stance on some social issue. No, it was just people seeing people that were hurting and they wanted to help. And that's a beautiful thing. I wish we could be more like that every day. We'll always be grateful for Steve and Silver Star. When we would have a problem, we could call him and he was on it and helped us get the city cleaned up. We had thousands, I would dare to say tens of thousands of people just showing up, wanting to help. Sean Evans and his team were able to organize all of those volunteers, and the city could contact them and say, this is what we need, and they would just go do it. It was people coming together to help other people. So just maybe today when we leave here, when we get in our cars and we drive, so maybe for an hour we can put all of this stuff that divides us to the side. And maybe even a little bit longer, we can maintain that attitude of looking at the heart, and seeing people for what they are. And finally, I'll just quote one more verse. I promise we're not at church, but these verses mean something to me. In the book of James, chapter 3, verse 9, and here James is talking about our tongue, our mouths, and the damage that we can do or the good that we can do. And he says, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. So I want to ask you, what is your story? Good, bad, embrace all of it. I pray that you will have the courage to live the story that you wrote or the story that's been written for you. And I pray that when you go and you get in your car and you leave and you drive and you're looking out the front windshield of where you're going, don't forget to look in the rearview mirror every now and then. And let us never forget where we've been and what we've been through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ham. Great words, and I thank you for being here. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Romines to come forward and the Superintendent of Moore Public Schools and share a few words.
Good morning. Today holds many emotions for each of us, and I'm no exception. To each of the personnel members of the Moore Fire Department, the Moore Police Department, the Moore Emergency Management Team, and all others who served as first responders in the rescue and recovery of the Moore Public Schools students, staff, and our families and community members on May 20th, I cannot ever thank you enough on behalf of the entire MPS family, their families, and our students. To the hospital employees who helped our injured and hurting families in the hours after the storm and weeks and months afterward, thank you. And still, it may never feel like expressing gratitude is ever enough for what each of you did to help heal and repair our families and our community over the past 10 years. We know the incredible resilience of the citizens of Moore following not only the May 20th devastation, but following each of the destructive events that have impacted our city over the years. Despite the overwhelming tragedy of May 20th, Moore came together and supported one another. Neighbors helped each other, volunteers came from all over the state and beyond, and the community rallied behind the families who lost loved ones. It was heartening to see how much love and compassion are demonstrated during such a difficult time, and yet I'm never surprised at the compassion, warmth, and prayers that envelop us from around the state and also from around the world. The 7 children that we lost at Plaza on May 20th are always remembered. They're always loved by their families, their friends, and by the Moore Public School family. A teacher of ours, her infant, a Briarwood pre-K student, and their infant sibling were not at school that day, but were also lost during the storm and are also always in our hearts. The City of Moore and organizations like Norman Regional Moore are incredibly blessed to have strong leaders who navigated the rebuilding and expansion of our community that had experienced in a decade since the storm. What I know is that Moore has not allowed May 20th to define us, but instead we have used it as an opportunity for growth and progress and to work towards a bright future together. The resilience of the Moore community is a testament to the strength and spirit of our citizens, and I have no doubt that no matter what comes, we remain more strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Romines, and you're right. We will always remember those who are lost and keep Moore Public Schools in our thoughts and prayers, especially at this time.
Extremely dangerous. This is very dangerous. We're talking about Newcastle Casino. From there, it's going to cross the river at 164th Street South, and then it's going to go, if it doesn't lift, it's going to go into Moore. And right now, it is red line, center line for Moore.
10 years ago, I was scheduled for an induction with my second son, and I went in on Monday morning for that induction. When I got there, the doctor told me that she was going to check the weather and see if I was actually in active labor. The nurse checked me, found out I was actually having contractions, so they decided they were going to have to keep me. We get all set up for my induction, and me and the nurse kind of had a joke that the baby was going to be here by like 1:30, 2 o'clock. I get my epidural at some point, so now I'm stuck in the bed and can't move.
I believe that's a spot that you're showing on radar and talking about on radar that's actually spinning and churning. So
the weather starts to get bad. We're kind of watching it on TV, and we hear stuff about, possible tornadoes and all that. But of course, like I said, hoping that the baby's here before. And then probably around maybe 2 or so, they come in and say that, we're going to have to take cover and my family's going to have to go downstairs.
East down 19th Street, tracked right over the area where we was at. We was within probably a quarter to half mile from it before we had to turn around and bail. Violent motion, a huge debris cloud wrapped around it.
Just knowing that I couldn't get up and couldn't go anywhere, and then being separated from my family. So there's really no communication between all of us and what's really going on. As they're taking cover, they decide they're going to have to move me to the place where there's no windows, as close away from the outside of the building as they can, which ended up being the OR. And we're just kind of hunkering down in the OR. That's when the tornado hits the hospital. You start to see stuff kind of falling out of the ceiling, and they're kind of covering me with warm blankets out of the blanket warmer, and we're all just kind of hunkered and just praying with each other. A lot of people say that you hear silence or like a train or whatever when tornadoes come through, but it was more of a silent thing. Like you didn't really hear anything, you just saw everything kind of falling around you. Severe weather tornadoes, nothing like that was on my mind at all. It was go in, have a baby, go home, and that's the end of it. Taking the shelter didn't really bother me because it's Oklahoma. You're used to taking shelter. We grew up learning how to take shelter. But once it actually began to hit and you're sitting there with other people and you're just praying because you have no idea what's going on or what's going to happen in the midst of it. After the tornado hit, the hospital was very dark. And I remember them taking me from the OR to I think it was maybe a triage closet or something like that. There was a doctor that came in and checked on me and the baby. And then it was a matter of trying to figure out how to get me out, which that was a task in itself because I'm upstairs. All the hallways are dark. Even when they carried me down on the backboard, it was dark going down the stairs. You're just kind of looking around. You can't really see much of anything. So the first light I actually saw was once we got outside of the hospital. It was muddy. There were trees and debris everywhere. There were cars and stuff kind of everywhere. So I knew that it was pretty bad. I didn't know how bad it was at the time. Once I got to Norman Regional, it was just kind of, being in my room and kind of waiting it out, figuring out what we were going to do next. I remember them coming in and asking me, if I wanted to kind of start my labor back up and try to finish it out, or if I wanted to go ahead and do the cesarean section. And I just told him to just do the section. His name is Braden. He will be 10. He knows a lot about the day he was born. So we talk about it all the time. He's learned how to Google himself on the internet, and he's found himself and found videos. So he knows a lot about it, and he tells other people, of course, now. He has a couple nicknames because of the tornado. So he's called Twister and NATO. Now I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 7 years. I started off at one hospital, and now I am a member of Norman Regional. I work in labor and delivery, which I absolutely love. And fun fact, I get to work alongside the doctor that delivered my son. She didn't realize who I was for a while because I never told her. And then one day she just walks up to me and she's like, "You're Shayla, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so she starts showing me pictures that she had from the hospital and stuff. And so we just kind of shared our pictures, and I told her thank you. Good morning. I'm really shy. So, first of all, I would like to thank Richie and Norman Regional for having me here today. As you guys know, my family and I are all survivors of the tornado. You'll hear a little bit of what you just heard in the video in my story, but so on May 20th, of course, I was scheduled to come in and have my second son. I actually had my first son at Moore Medical as well. So he was 4 at that time. We weren't aware of any threat of severe weather that day, of course. As you heard in the video, my doctor, Dr. Miller, wanted to send me home because her husband had given her information about the weather. And so she was like, I think we're going to try to send you home and come back and try it again a different day if we can. Well, clearly that's not what happened. Um, my husband and I and my oldest son at that time were there, and my sister and my mom would join us later. And the agreement between Cindy and I was that he was going to be here by like 1:30. Clearly that didn't happen either. When the tornado became an imminent threat, the Moore medical team acted very quickly. They moved my family and everyone else, including 2 other moms that had already had their babies that day, down to the cafeteria. And those 2 ladies and I are still friends. So we all have something in common, and they're actually nurses as well. But since I had received the epidural, I couldn't go anywhere. And so 4 of the labor and delivery staff members, including my nurse, Cindy, they moved me to the OR, which was the safest place for us to be at that time. And they also had to give me medication to stop my labor because at that time I was 8 centimeters dilated. So I was close. I was close. And as we watched the weather forecast from my phone, we learned that we were in the direct path of the tornado. And these amazing women began to cover me with blankets from the warmer, followed by their own bodies, as debris began to fall from the ceiling all around us. And I just remember them huddling over me. And so in that moment, there was a feeling of uncertainty, but that feeling later turned to an unusual sense of calm as we began to all pray with each other for our own protection and safety. Once the tornado had passed, they moved me to a very small room. And the physician that came to check on me, I later learned and confirmed that it was Dr. Harmon, which is one of our pediatricians here. My husband and others came to find us, and they carried me down to an ambulance via a backboard, and they transported me over to Norman Regional Healthplex. So there's exhaustion from the events and also fear, but the fear was mostly because I didn't know where my mother, my sister, and my oldest son were. With no communication, we were all separated. So we welcomed our son, Braden Emmanuel, at 7:32, and he was delivered by Dr. Mulligan. My mom and sister and my oldest son would later join us, followed also with my dad, who found them somewhere near the 7-Eleven where it used to be. Today, my family has changed just a little bit. Jerome is a teacher now. Shaden, our oldest, is going to high school. Sorry. Braden has just completed 4th grade. And he'll be celebrating his 10th birthday tomorrow, which he's extremely excited about. He wasn't counting down to the end of school. He was counting down to his birthday. He, like I said, he's learned how to Google himself, which he finds fascinating. And he answers to NATO and Twister on a regular basis. A lot of people don't even know what his real name is. So over the past couple years, I think is when he's really, kind of decided his birthday is pretty cool. And he'll talk to you about it sometimes, but not very often because he's probably more shy than I am. And he's also, what I learned recently, he's surprised that most people don't know his story. He made a statement about it at church the other day. He was like, yeah, some people don't even know that I was born in a tornado. And as I said, I'm a registered nurse in the labor and delivery department at Norman Regional. So as you can see, things have come full circle. I joined Norman Regional about a year ago, and always wanting to be a labor and delivery nurse. When I was given the opportunity and the job offer, it just felt right. So here I am. And I actually worked with Dr. Mulligan for a few months before she found out that I was who I was. I just kind of kept quiet because, like I said, I'm shy. And it's just weird walking up to somebody and saying, hey, do you remember me? Even though I did do that to Richie when I saw him in the cafeteria. I remember walking up to him and I said, you don't know me, but I know you. And I told him who I was. So, and I had actually seen him actually in the gift shop buying candy before that, and I didn't tell him. And so one day, like I said, Dr. Mulligan finally walks up to me and she asked if I was the one in the Moore tornado, and we shared pictures. And I have found pictures in my little, Google photos since then, and I'll send them to her every once in a while. I found one with her actually in the photo from when Braden was delivered. And so I might have been a little geeked as well and nervous in my first delivery with her. So that was also fun. It was kind of mind blowing that I had come that far, and here I am delivering babies now with the doctor that delivered mine. So it's been an honor and privilege to work alongside of her and to be a part of other families' birth stories. And lastly, I'd like to share something special, which is the meaning of Braden's middle name. Emmanuel means God is with us. And when I chose that name, I just wanted a name that had a special meaning. So I wanted a biblical name and something that was special. That's all it was. And even though it was chosen way before May 20th, I definitely feel that it was a fitting name and a descriptor for all of us that day. So thank you for having me, and God bless.
Thank you, Shayla. I'm so grateful for the journey and that full circle, you coming back and serving our patients the way you do. So grateful for that. I believe on that day, I saw Shayla moving to being MSTATed to the Healthplex, moving into the ambulance and going across town. I believe in my mind, I can see that. But I went to see her the very next day at the Healthplex. And after I introduced myself and some small chat, I said, well, are you going to name your son Norman? I think she made the right choice in Braden Emmanuel. On that day, on May 20th, 2013, I missed my son's 5th birthday. His name is also Braden. So it's a special day. I'm glad you're here, and thank you again for sharing your story. At this time, our chaplain, Nick Napoli, is going to share a few words of encouragement. He's going to read the names of those who are lost. We'll have a moment of silence, and that'll be followed by the Moore High School Chamber Choir. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry, Nick. I brought a picture. It's going to be hard for you to see, but this is that room. You can see this is the wall that disappeared while Shayla and those 4 nurses were in there. So pretty remarkable that you're here and everybody's safe. Nick.
Thanks, Rick. I was tasked with reading the names of the victims from the May 20th tornado, and I thought it appropriate that I just take you through my thought process as I approach that, sort of to invite you into it. Oftentimes, remembering is saved for happy events, for things we like to remember: vacation, birth of a child, a graduation. And we look back on those memories because we want to remember how we felt. We want to remember how it made us see the world differently. But when we approach an event like this, where we lost so many, we don't want to remember that. Our body actually actively fights it to protect us from the trauma of that memory. We intentionally try to forget it and store it away somewhere. And so when we come to a time like this where we actively choose to remember something that hurt us, I think that's a sacred space and a sacred time. And so I want to invite you all into that sacred space. And as I read these names, as you hear them, I want you to have their name, their image, how you felt about them wash over you so that you can choose to enter something that you know might cause you pain. But I think that when we go into that sacred space, we come out of it changed, maybe even healed. And so as we continue to do this throughout the years, remember that you are making that active choice to enter into a sacred space where your human person may not necessarily want to be. So I'm just going to invite you into a moment of silence, just briefly, and then I will break that silence with the names. And then once I'm done reading, I'll leave just a little bit more space for you to let those names, those faces, those feelings wash over you. So join me. Terry Long, Megan Futrell, Case Futrell, Ginny Neely, Antonia Candelariat, Kyle Davis, Janae Hornsby, Sydney Angle, Emily Knatzer, Nicholas McCabe, Christopher Legg, Cindy Plumley, Deanna Ward, Rick Jones, Williams Sass, Tawana Robinson, Randy Smith, Leslie Johnson, Hemant Bond, Shannon Quick, Sydney Vargas, Karina Vargas, Gina Stromsky, Richard Brown, Catherine Begay. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Denny from the Moore High School Chamber Choir up to the podium.
Tragedy is a hard thing to deal with. Sometimes it can take years, many tears, or dreams filled with our worst fears. Sometimes we are left with an aching heart, a yearning part of our life that feels like it will tear us apart. Tragedy is a force that cannot be stopped. It doesn't ask for forgiveness, and we are left with these sinking questions of how do I restart? Will people stand up and do their part? How do I react? And what if I can't make it? It doesn't matter how we act. A siren sounded, and the world we knew in that moment was altered. A feeling of anxiety of what the ominous clouds were doing filled us with dread. A roaring thunderstorm, and then we began to understand this wasn't anything we could simply comprehend. On May 20th, 2013, there were two realities, the beginning and the ending. But I believe we realized that the city of Moore had more to give. We are worth more than tragedy. Struck with tragedy, we reacted. There was a burning ache and we acted. Struck with tragedy, we responded. Each to our own separate bondage, we held close to the fact that we had a clear promise. Hope is something we believed. Moore is a city of great security. We hold true to a long-standing unity. The people of Moore strive to be our best in the sense we reflect hope. hope for a new beginning, hope for a new tomorrow, hope for a new chapter, hope that our lives truly matter. We have an understanding that there will be another tomorrow. A tornado that destroyed our homes, our community, and our schools, but it did not destroy our compassion, faith, strength, or our worth. More is a beautiful community of life, life that will exist today, tomorrow, and in the very distant future.
Surround me, sky, sea, and still, and still.
Wow, Director Herbal, thank you for bringing a wonderful group of students and performers. You guys did an outstanding job. Thank you for that inspirational performance. And those words, is it Denny? Those words were incredible. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm guessing that most of us, if not all of us, were touched on that day in 2013. Those of us who are here knew someone, heard the story, directly impacted, and I'm willing to bet that today you were equally impacted by our speakers and these performances. And so I want to thank you all for being here today, for remembering, for honoring, for being a part of our community, for aspiring to be more, to be better, to remember that hope and the healing. And I want to leave you with the words that our volunteers at Moore Medical Center had posted above the volunteer station in the former Moore Medical Center. And it was a scripture, it was Hebrews, and you can see it if you walk out here right around the corner by our daily grind where you can pick up Starbucks coffee if you'd like. On the wall, it says something like, "Let us go forth and encourage one another to outbursts of love and good deeds." And so I hope, as Councilmember Ham says, that for the next hour or all day, that we can do that. We can encourage one another to outbursts of love and good deeds and remember the good and be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Canine Comfort is available. I want to thank you all again for being here. Let's make it a great day. Thank you.